website too, and I'll give you the quick spiel on it. We're 38 years as a company, and we are sustainability and certification. That is pretty much our business. We have 3 divisions. One's the certification division, one's the consultancy division, the other is the standards division. So essentially, if you look at all the primary standards, forestry stewardship, marine stewardship, aquaculture stewardship, SCS was at the forefront of launching all of that. And then we launched our NutriClean label many years ago. That was about pesticide residue-free foods. And so SCS's DNA is about certifications, sustainability, and standards. And over 11,000 clients, Chelsey, and we work with everybody from Home Depot to Amazon to you name it. So
you guys are busy.
We are busy. Well, so we have 110 services in the company, and we actually go from anything from forestry, jewelry, mining, aquaculture, food safety, green building, carbon offsets, you name it. So that's SCS. We're globally structured. We have offices all over the world, people all over the world, conducting social audits, environmental audits, you name it. So that's SCS. So that's
awesome.
SCS.
How did you get into jewelry, or when did you guys get into jewelry, and has it been difficult to set up the certification standards for natural and lab grown diamonds and metals?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll give you a quick background. Jewelry and in itself, we've been in it for a long time. So we've always been involved with RJC, Fairmind, ARM, all LBMA, all of these programs in one form or the other. Specifically what happened with diamonds is 2.5 years ago, FTC sent cease and desist letters to 8 or 9 lab growing companies, telling them to stop making claims of sustainability because they were greenwashing. Every one of them was out there saying that the greatest thing that happened. They have everything down. FTC said, stop. You need to stop. You are greenwashing the consumer. They all came to us, the industry came to us and said, we need your help. Can you put a standard together for us? That started 2.5 years ago. And we brought together a big stakeholder group of NGOs, academia, labs, industry, and everything like that. And under our standards arm, we started developing the standard. About like a year into it, a little less than a year into it, Chelsey. So what happened was we realized what was happening was an interesting dynamic between the lab-grown sector and the mine sector. They were fighting each other because the mine guys were essentially saying lab-grown is a bad product, don't buy it. They're not as good as mined, whatnot. And they're horrible energy users. They're just gobble up energy, whatnot. And then the lab-grown guys are saying, why would you ever want to buy a mined diamond when it's all about blood diamonds? And look at Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, and it's all about blood. Someone's dying for these diamonds. They started this, and they said every diamond is creating a big hole in the ground. It's an environmental holocaust. It's a disaster. Don't ever buy it. And we're looking at it going, this is a highly unproductive conversation. Each sector's got its own problems, but now they're attacking each other. So we took the approach of like looking at the standard and saying there are key pillars in the standard. We looked at environmental issues, social issues, governance issues about the company itself, who owns it, corruption, whatnot, business practices and things like that. Then we introduced what's called the life cycle component. That is the most important part of the standard, where we looked at each category for itself. What are the impacts of that category? And we said, no comparing. Comparison does not make any sense because one is a category which is different. What the other is an entirely different category. So we started creating this model where it said, compare your own category. If you're a mine diamond, look at how good you are with the rest of the mine diamonds. If you are operating a mine in a highly environmentally sensitive area versus someone else who's doing a good job, well, you need to look at it that way. Don't compare. So we created that standard that created a set of impact categories that actually created a very balanced system. So if you're a lab grown, it's going to look at your impact from energy. So we said energy is your biggest problem, and it depends on where you get your energy from. If your grid is sitting in somewhere where the portfolio of the energy mix is coal, well, you got a problem. You have a real problem because it's like people saying, I drive an electric car, so I feel like I saved the world. No, you don't. If you drive that electric car and you go home and you plug it into a grid, that's 80% fired by coal, you created a bigger problem for the world. So we looked at it like that and said, look, the grid is where you are. Because if you go there and if you have a hydropower grid, you have a mix of renewable energy, you have nuclear energy, things like that, it changes the dynamics of how a producer works. So if you're growing in the United States, in Israel or India, it really depends on what your impact is going to be. We looked at the same thing from the mine side. You have no energy use. The mine people have zero energy use because when I say zero, they're very minimal, but their big impacts are land use. They dig a hole in the ground. How do they manage it? But it's about a management issue. But they also are looking at the LCA. What it does is hard rock mining is one of the cleanest forms of mining, Chelsey. It's actually one of the cleanest forms of mining. They don't have any much contamination, things like that. They're digging rock, getting the diamonds out. So we looked at it and said, the LCA will actually allow you to look at some of these mines and say, in the future, when climate change hits, these can actually become water reservoirs. What's the future value of a mine? So we looked at it from a trade-off standpoint to say, really, you have to analyze the entire picture before you say, what's the basis of that product? That's how we took a very balanced approach on how we look at mines versus lab grown. And then we introduced recycled diamonds. It was a very key component. We said, any product that is actually going to be recycled will quickly come out ahead in the system we've got, because you eliminate impacts immediately. You don't have mining impacts, you don't have energy impacts, very minimal energy impacts. As long as your social issues are controlled, your cutting and operation issue, operations are very much under the OECD guidelines. You have no child labor, forced labor, all of those things are tight. Recycled diamonds and recycled metal come out ahead really fast. So this is how we created a unified standard. So we started off from a lab-grown sector that was under pressure by FTC, and we, over evolution, we created a system that now fairly assesses recycled, mined, and lab-grown. Not making a comparison, but making an assessment of how you operate, what's the basis of your operation. And what we've now done, actually, Chelsey, I'll send you some information, is over the iterations, is like, we've actually come out at a really good spot. We have actually now, this thing is going to be called Certified Sustainably Rated Diamond. It's going to be rated against the sustainability pillars of conflict-free, of zero impact, climate neutrality, things like that. It's going to get rated. So we're never claiming that any product is sustainable, because truly in true nature form, no product's ever sustainable. Once you take it out, once you put it in use, it's gone. That's the basis of sustainability. So, but what we're saying is, let's rate it against sustainability. Well, how well does it rate against sustainability? So that's kind of how we've come out, because it looks at the impacts, and climate neutrality is a very important part of this whole standard. So we look at your footprint. What's your annual footprint? What's your legacy footprint? We've included also black carbon, methane, and ozone. That's like the biggest thing for climate issues now. It's going to be what's going to cause our climate issues in the next 10 years. CO2 is a long-term effect, but we're looking at some of these other things. And then we also, what we did is we created this direct investment mechanism through the standard, meaning you're just not going to buy offsets and say you don't even know where your money went. We've created a system to retrofit brick kilns in the Himalayan region to actually eliminate black carbon in that region to prevent the melting of the Himalayas. Water supply for 1.5 billion people. So we're creating a mechanism for direct investment into those projects, so you can actually know where your money went.
Is for mined diamonds?
Mined and lab grown. It doesn't matter. So once you create a footprint, you're going to have to offset your footprint. The way they offset it is, if you're in a grid, there's nothing you're going to do about it. There's no way. What are you going to do? I mean, you're not going to go tell PG&E to change your grid. It is what it is. So we're looking at it and saying, how can they become climate neutral? So it gives them the mechanism to invest into direct projects like this. And the beauty of these projects is it not only reduces black carbon, it's a big health crisis. It's a health crisis for 9 countries in that region with thousands of brick kilns that are just not only polluting the environment, but they're killing people with asthma and heavy metals and things like that. So we're investing in retrofitting those brick kilns through this group called IC Mode. It's a big development in the 9-country region that's involved with CCAC, that's the Clean Air Climate Coalition. So you can actually invest into projects that actually allow you to get the climate benefits of saying, you're now investing in something that's actually going to change the climate and the health issue. So that's kind of the long answer for you, but that's how the standard evolved. Here's where we're at. Here's how we're looking at all the multiple products. So you know.
So is
you
it
get a sense of
something
it.
that, yeah, is it something that you would ever, because there's going to be a scale where you rate recycled, lab, mined diamonds across a scale, right? So would you ever compare them together? Like recycled, I think you said, is probably better than both lab and mined, but you never would say like mined is always better than lab grown diamonds, or lab grown diamonds are always
No.
better than mined, because there's
No.
positives and negatives to both of those
Exactly.
things,
So
and you're
the way
always creating or taking something. So there's
right. So the way that we've done about it is, the way to say it is, if you put a number, it becomes a bit arbitrary, because we looked at it like that. We said, there's no way to evaluate slave labor. You're either good or not. You don't have 50% good slave labor category. I'm like, I think I know that 50% of my labor is not, the rest I don't know. Well, that's you can't do that. So we looked at that, and we said that the biggest category of impact is your production impacts, your environmental impacts. So we have a category which says zero impact production. That is the one that looks at 10 impact categories. It splits it into 5 into mining, 5 into energy use, like 4 into energy use. And so it goes about like a breakdown like that, Chelsey. And that's where you'll see the differences between a stone and a producer. Some will say 100% offset, some will say 50% offset, some will say 25% offset. That's why you will notice that trade-off moving back and forth. From a lab-grown sector, you'll see something that they may be offsetting 7 out of the 9 impacts or 10 impacts. The mine may offset 5 out of 10 and working its way towards the other 10. Recycle may start with 8 out of the 10, and meaning that you may still have to offset some of your energy use. How much is that? How much are you going to offset? You may come out really ahead. So that is the category that's going to show the difference in your impacts. That's how it's going to look at. So it will show you, if you take a stone, if you say this is recycle, it will kind of show you, this is my, it's almost like this is my DNA. This is what I look like. This is my profile. This is what it's going to be. So it will show you these panels which says I'm conflict free, I am climate neutral, I have provenance assurance. So it'll go through these 5 sections to show you what you are and how the impact production will list you out and how well do you score in these 10 impact categories. There are 10 impact categories within the zero impact production panel. That life cycle will rate you to those and how you score. And one thing I did forget to mention, one of the other important things that we've done in this standard, Chelsey, for the very first time, we are utilizing 99.9% assurance for the consumer, meaning we will be guaranteeing you where the stone came from. And we're doing that by a combination of methods. There are several technologies we're using. One is with a lab in Australia called Source Certain. We're essentially creating a DNA for every stone. We can essentially fingerprint a lab stone or a mine, and we can take a stone anywhere down the supply chain, take a vapor sample, and we'll tell you which mine it came from or which lab it came from. That's how good the technology's gotten. Then we're also utilizing Serene, which uses AI-based surface mapping and imaging. And Serene can also tell you how a stone came from which mine it came from. They do it a little differently based on equipment that they install in cutters, polishers. It's all the supply chain. So Serene is a great Israeli company that what they did was they've been in the business to, I would say, optimize the stone that's cut out of every rough. They used that same technology, and then they leveraged that AI that came out of all those cutting machines and whatnot, and utilized algorithms now to map the stone back. So they've augmented their system, so it's fabulous. So we're adopting that system also to as a part of a traceability. Then we also have GCal system from cutter to polisher. So each of these has its unique approaches, because one can create a DNA at the mine, then you can take sampling. One has a continuous system that goes from the mine or lab to a consumer through a system that has to be continuous. And GCal system is one that goes from cutters and polishers to mark. So we use a combination of these, and then we do surveillance testing, sampling, and whatnot. That's how we can assure the consumer you have 99% guarantee where the stone comes from.
How long do you think that's going to take? Well, 2 things. One, that's only for new material, so newly mined. and lab grown, not for recycled. But how long do you think it'll take to implement that into, so like consumers get used to like looking for that when they're buying something new?
Yeah, it really depends on, as we start putting our system into place, Chelsey, what we're hoping to do is actually making sure. So this is how it's going to unfold. What we're envisioning is that this sustainability certificate is going to go along with every grading certificate, just like every GIA has a grading certificate, all right? So what we're tying this to now, it's unique to every source, whether it be a lab or a mine, and it has to be backed up by that traceability. So we are in conversations with all the labs to say, we're going to attach the certificate of sustainability. So when a consumer buys this, they're not only going to get the grading certificate that goes with all their stones, they're going to get a claim of sustainability attached with it. And if they want to unlock it, we're creating a platform for them to unlock a certificate to say, what that certificate's going to be, what's that sustainability of that certificate. So we're creating the back end to say, get that QR code, go on any device, unlock that certificate. And if you want to purchase it, purchase a certificate for yourself. So we're headed down that path, and that will be completely backed up by the traceability system. That's where we're headed. Time frame, it really, in terms of establishing it, it doesn't take much, because if we have a mine or a lab, all it is samples that need to go to a lab or a system that Serene sets in. And keep in mind, Serene systems are pretty much all over the place. They are all over the place. Serene's been in the business so long. There isn't a cutter and polisher that's not using a Serene system. There isn't. So it really comes down to would a mine have it? If a mine just puts one of those units, you automatically have that system going, because it's a missing link. So once the rough comes out, they're able to capture all of this at the cutters and polishers, jewelry manufacturers. That system is locked down. If there's a piece in the mine missing, if you put that, it automatically connects the dots. It just makes sure that the entire system is working now. Now we have source certain, we create a fingerprint there. It doesn't take those guys too long. They are very careful about the number, what samples they want, where they want it from. They create a signature. They create a mine signature or a lab signature. Once that's done, we can technically sample anywhere downstream to say, where does this come from? And that moves pretty fast. And so once that's done, now it's a measure of, if you look at it now, all the GIAs, IGIs, all the grading labs, they know where the stone comes from.
Yeah.
They trace it back. So for us, it becomes pretty simple. We are with least disruption to the supply chain. We simply work with them to integrate that. They tell us, hey, they're telling us these stones are rated by you, sustainably certified by you, whatnot. We just simply tell them, let's see it. Let's make sure it traces back. If it is, we give you the clearance and authorization to add the rating on that grading certificate.
So even if the mine doesn't agree to it, the system can still figure out which mine it's from at any point.
There's a way to do that. If the mine doesn't agree to it, it's a little bit on a back end, because you're right, because what we can do is, like, even if a mine doesn't do it, and if they say, because they all claim that it's coming from somewhere, right. And if they do that, what we can do is we can do cluster analysis. We'll just have to reverse engineer it. We can take clusters of diamonds that they're claiming that it's coming from a certain mine, and we can say, does this cluster look, they will literally tell you, does the cluster match, or if it does not match. If it does not match, they can essentially tell you this whole thing about where it's coming from is bogus. So, so it's a highly disruptive technology. That's what it's going to come down to. It's going to change the diamond business. It's a highly disruptive technology. Been around for many years, keep in mind. But the big players never wanted it out. Yes.
It's been hidden.
Yes. Yeah, they didn't want it out.
Do you have a set definition of what sustainable jewelry means?
So I wouldn't say it's set definition. I would say that's what this SCS 007 standard is going to define. This standard will define that, Chelsey, because what it's doing now, it's looking at diamonds, it's looking at metals as part of the standard, just like, as it's looking at recycled gold, recycled silver, recycled platinum. If you look at all these things, then if you are under the SCS 007 standard, let's say you have the diamonds, whatever the source may be, whether it be lab grown, mined, or recycled, certified under the 007 standard, SCS 007 standard. And if you have the metal that holds that piece of diamond, whether it be gold, silver, platinum, certified under that SCS 007 standard, meeting the recycled content. So if you look at the 007 standard, it will make a reference to the recycled content standard. So essentially we'll say, meet the requirements of the recycled content standard, and then ensure that you're doing all the social pieces. Because the recycled content standard only is a mass balance standard. It's just looking at what's in, what's out. It doesn't look at social issues. But 007, the standard will look at social issues, governance issues, and any other environmental issue. So if you meet the recycled component and you meet this, then that piece of jewelry will be sustainably rated jewelry. So that's how we are defining, basically saying that jewelry can be given that entire claim if you meet these requirements within the 007 standard. So it's all about the standard. So
because I feel like one of the biggest hurdles here is really for the consumer, and how many companies out there call themselves sustainable, and how it's so individually defined right now because there's no definition, and that's what you guys are trying to build. So I think I know the answer, but what would you suggest for customers to help guard themselves from greenwashing, or to know a company is sustainable when they say it's sustainable?
Absolutely. The first thing I would ask any consumer to ask is, who made that claim? The first question is, ask the company, ask yourself, who made that claim? If it's a self-made claim, then stop. You need to stop, because if some company is saying, we've got everything together, we're 100% ethical, we're 100% sustainable, then stop there and say, if it's your own claim, that's BS. We can't buy that. That's just nonsense. Number two, ask for independent validation. Who validated this? Is someone independently validated? Then number three, say, where's the standard behind it? Is there a standard? Because the bottom line is, Chelsey, with all of this, I come back to saying, if there's no standard that you can validate it to, it's pointless. It's pointless. Anybody can say anything all day long, and it's like I say, our people said, well, what do you do? It's like, it's actually pretty simple to tell you what we do. It's like, you can tell us that you're 5.5 feet tall. You know what we will do? We'll come out there, put a ruler against you and tell you stand. I'll tell you if you're really 5.5 feet or not. That's what I will do. So that's the standard. The ruler is the standard, and we're the verifier. You can tell me all day long, Chelsey, you're 5.5 feet, but I put you up to the ruler. I'm sorry, you're 5'7". I'm sorry, you're
that
5
would be amazing.
Yeah, there you go. So that's it, Chelsey, because if there's no standard, and if it's not independently validated to a standard, then consumers should immediately ask the question, stop. Is it independently validated? Where's the standard? Who's the CB who's validating it? Can you prove
independently validated would be like the SCS? There is
exactly.
They have proof on their website, a sign. What would it would be like a seal or a sign?
Yes, you will see. Yes, you will see a mark. Let me see if I can pull one up. I'll just temporarily show you this, but this is just still in development, Chelsey. So give me. There's a lot of material that's being developed right now, so I'll try to pull it up so you can kind of see. Sorry, Chelsey, I'm just trying to pull it up.
Oh yeah, no worries. How do you feel about, this is not part of it, but how do you feel about brands who say they use certified materials, but they themselves are not actually certified, right? Like, you can buy metals that are from companies that are certified, but then should you then be able to say you're certified?
So here's how that thing is done. Yes, there are many of them who say that use certified material. You know what the fundamental issue with that is? That we always say that you as a brand, you have a responsibility to be certified yourself. And here's why I say that, Chelsey. When you take a brand or a retailer, generally they buy from many suppliers. What I've quickly come to see, this is not just in the jewelry space, this is across the board in other spaces too. When they make the claim of sustainability, you always have to tie it back to the source. Where do you get it from? You know what happens usually? You buy it from 10 people and only 2 of them are truly certified. But then you make a blanket statement for all your products. So essentially you buy 2 products that are certified and you make a claim on 10 products. And that's pure greenwashing. At that point, you're utilizing only 2 suppliers who truly are certified. And then across the board, it doesn't work. So what we say is, if a brand wants to do it, make sure that we're telling you, you are allowed to use our claim on X, Y, and Z products. Meaning those are the only things in your supply chain that are certified. You may be buying gold from 10 different people, but only one is Hoover and Strong that's certified by us. Who knows about the rest of them? We don't know anything about the rest of them, but you're going to make a claim that you buy certified product. It's okay. There's nothing legally wrong by stating that we buy certified product. But if they take that and say, hence we are certified, that's a problem. That's a real problem. You can state that you buy stuff because no one's going to question you because you're simply making, but that's kind of how they blur the lines. A lot of time it becomes a problem because then the consumer says, hey, they're certified. But the reality is they may have 15 suppliers and only one is certified. So the consumer gets really confused because that is a bit of a misleading way of marketing, because you're really not tying it to the source and all your sources certified. That's really the question. So the answer is, we encourage brands and retailers to ensure that, look, whatever you're doing, make sure that we are tying it to whatever the source of your certification is, because otherwise it's confusing to the consumer. The consumer thinks that all your product is certified. That's not true. All your product is not certified.
What I run into a lot in my thought process of this is that I know there's no source for recycled chain right now that we use. There's no company that has certified chain. All the chain is generally manufactured in China or Italy. And so when a lot of companies say like 100% recycled metals, in my head, I think I can never possibly say that because I know our chain is not, I don't have standards for our chain. I don't have standards for our clasps or our earring backs or like our posts, things that like we buy in bulk from other companies, that there just isn't that source yet. But then I see where the consumer is going to be so confused because there are other brands saying everything, and I know that they're not.
That's not true. And you from the industry know for a fact that can't be true, right? Because when you make that statement, you can be assured that just is not possible because there are things that you just don't get. There's no availability right now.
There's nobody who makes them.
Right. How do you make a blanket statement? And we do look at some of those things, as I mentioned to you, like little things like clasp, whatnot. We do classify some of those as ancillary because we look at it saying, look, if they're so small, we look at market value. Is there a big market value or a reason to commit fraud in that area? If there's not, if the market value is so minimal, it's like nobody's going to try to commit. I mean, when we look at blood diamonds, it's like, the blood diamonds are mostly, they want the bigger stones. That's where that's where they get more money. What are you going to do with the $10 stone? I mean, what do we, there's not much fraud.
You're not buying a lot of guns with that.
Yeah, exactly. Fraud is based on value. How much money can you make on a certain piece, right? That's where the bigger fraud comes in. So yes, so it is a problematic. Let me show you this.
Okay.
I think you have to allow me to share, Chelsey. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, this is what's being developed right now. Certified sustainably rated diamond. This is what's going to go on the websites, go on panels in stores. So essentially, this is going to be turned into marketing material for anybody that's going to be able to have it. Eventually, you'll have it. What's the sustainably rated diamond? This is what it's going to look like. What is it getting measured against? It's going to have a source to market traceability, ethical stewardship, climate neutrality, zero impact production, conflict free. This is kind of how it's going to start getting into the hands of when you ask how are you going to display this, we're going to tell consumers, look for this. Do they have this? Do they have this on their website? Do they have this on their store? If they have this, then you're going to be able to, so this QR code is going to actually help them open the details of the certificate, the panels behind it.
And this is going to be like per stone.
Eventually it will be per stone. Yes, eventually.
But it could also it'll also just be for a brand, like for
a brand.
some of
if
our smaller products,
yours,
smaller
yes,
diamonds.
Exactly. For a brand, if it's a brand certified, it will carry that. For example, we have WT Latitude now, that's a lab-grown producer. They did everything. They're going to market with cut finish stone. So they're going to put this on their entire website because all of their product is certified. So that's how it's going to look. So
awesome.
So there you go, Chelsey. What else you got?
Thank you. That was it. I think that's it.
Okay.
We've covered a lot. I mean, I think that we kind of talked about what the future holds for jewelry and the diamond certification and then being able to do the traceability stuff. So I don't know if there's anything else.
There's a lot of market potential here,
Yeah.
Chelsey. You know what's funny is because I've always looked at it's like a lot of industries are already doing this. It's everything from forestry and even aquaculture is doing this. Jewelry is just, I mean, it's a matter of time. It was a discretionary purchase, but as the consumer becomes more and more aware, it's all about the consumer. And we're entering a time when a consumer wants transparency. They want to know where their product comes from. They want to know if their product they got has harmed anyone, has harmed in the environment. That's the future of our consumer that we're looking at. And all our research we're doing, it's always coming back to consumers saying, we want to know where our product is. Did it do environmental damage? So that's all transparency. And transparency can only be backed up by a standard and verification. So that's what it leads to saying, look for the mark. If you look for the mark, then you'll know what this mark eventually stands for. That's how I at least kind of see where it's evolving into the jewelry space. And, there's always going to be people who don't care. What are you going to do about that? I mean, it's like I say, the organic label, right? It's not for everyone. Some people are going to go buy organic. Some people just don't want to buy it. So it is what it is. I mean, the market will serve both purposes, but this is a unique market. It is looking for the claim of sustainability, the claim of transparency, and it's going to continue to grow, so, and your recycled diamond, you're in a prime spot. You're just coming into a space where it's going to meet the consumer need, in the coming time. I mean, and there's no lack of diamonds. I mean, there's no lack of recycled gold, no lack of diamonds. You just got to bring it back with more value, so.
Yeah. I mean, I try to tell people that I think we've taken everything we need from the earth. I mean, I balance that with the fact that it is a huge source of income and for a lot of the developing world, and is mining. So there is some balance in there, I think, but in general, we have all of the materials that we need just sitting in our jewelry box.
Absolutely. So. And you're absolutely right, because when mining done right, it does contribute to societies, whatnot. And mining in itself, I mean, I'm a chemical engineer, an environmental engineer by trade, but